Well, I personally don't think it's the outside of the vehicle anymore, it's the inside of the vehicle, and the amount of technology that's permeating the cabin space, and we're well beyond the entertainment systems and the GPS systems, things like that. It's push a button and find your favorite restaurant, push another button and you find out where the traffic is in the city. It's the connected vehicle, and it's the whole move of the auto sector to become a digital industry, no longer just a product-driven industry. Actually, it's the customer-friendly side. Dealerships have always had somewhat of a barrier between the customer and their product, and they're breaking down those barriers. They're becoming much more welcoming. They're putting a lot of money into a dealership experience, and the experience go well beyond just buying a new product or being shown to an office to arrange financing. It's the whole look and feel. It's almost become an outing. In some respects, it's as much fun now to go to a car dealer as to go to a shopping mall and look at watches or at new radios and things like that. There's a ton of stuff to do. You can often get yourself a coffee. You're going to be treated like gold. And so they're making a lot of progress that way, becoming very, very consumer friendly. Well, it's actually maintaining their territory. Digital strategies and all of the digital age is eliminating the fences that were traditionally around, where you'd have, in a Calgary, you'd have a dealer in that end of the city and that end of the city, and one maybe in the center and one out on the outer edges. And with digital strategies and what the Googles and the Apples can do, a dealer's ability to hold his territory is really difficult now. And he has to embrace those strategies. And the people who understand those strategies most are the 16 to 30-year-old crowd. The car buyers are the 50 to 70-year-old crowd. And so bridging the modern technologies that our younger generation embrace versus the older generation who has the money to buy the vehicles. And that's a real challenge for a lot of car dealers. Well, the manufacturer challenge is the number of manufacturers out there, quite frankly. There's about 28, 29 brands in the marketplace. And I walked the show for the last 2-3 hours, and again last night, and every single one of these guys has got a spectacular presentation. Vehicles to die for, technology to die for, dealers manning these booths that are really friendly and welcoming. And how do you distinguish yourself? And so how do you differentiate yourself from this booth versus this booth, or that dealership from that dealership? And that's a real challenge to the vehicle manufacturers backstopping this industry, is how do you do that? And the way they're doing it actually right now is through technology. And it ties back to some of the other questions that we've reviewed, is it's in-vehicle technology. How can I differentiate that? This whole autonomous vehicle that has become so hot, the Apples and the Googles, is a way to differentiate yourself. If I'm an Apple vehicle, I'm not a GM, Ford, Chrysler, Honda, Toyota vehicle. And boy, that's different, and we know what an Apple can do with all these other consumer goods. So that's a huge challenge for them, and one of the reasons why they're embracing the Apples and the Googles of the world in a very big way. Well, the aftermarket is a really interesting territory to go into, because we come from an era where if you have a vehicle in the driveway and you use it, you've got a lot of aftermarket repairs. You're going to be at your car dealer, you're going to be at the Canadian Tires or your Joe's Garage looking for repair. Vehicles are so well built today that some of the major repairs don't happen until year 7, year 8, year 9. And so you're pretty well maintenance free for the first 4, 5, 6 years, other than your standard and required oil changes and wiper blades and things like that. And so the aftermarket's big challenge, first and foremost, is managing to that age structure where you actually have some business. And so you need a lot of middle-aged and older vehicles on the road, and all the stuff that Albertans have been buying the last 5, 6 years really aren't hitting their aftermarket years just yet. The other big challenge for them that we've touched on in a lot of our questions today is the amount of technology going into these vehicles. Ford introduces an aluminum body pickup truck, which is groundbreaking in terms of technology, fuel efficiency. What happens if it's in a minor accident? And how do you repair that? And that's the aftermarket side of this business, is how do you manage to keep your own people up to speed technology-wise and train them to keep up with the billions and billions of dollars that the vehicle companies keep putting into their vehicles and newer technology. Car dealers are a little better at it because they've got the factories behind them, But the traditional aftermarket struggles with that changeover from relatively low technology vehicles to stunningly high technology vehicles. The best part actually comes down to being in the auto sector itself. We work hard in this industry, but boy, do we play hard. And you have access to some of the best product. We test drive vehicles for a living. And so in our company, we got 5 to 8 vehicles in our driveway at any particular time. And I get to take those vehicles home and play with them. There's a little kid that lives 4 or 5 houses down from me. And I like to tell his story because I bring home all these fabulous products. And this kid's really shy. And so he comes over, and you can see him out my window coming over, and he's walking around this car, and and this is an 8 or 9 year old, maybe he's 10 or 12 years old, and he's already being turned on with this industry. And boy, is it ever fun to be able to see someone of that age embrace the kinds of vehicles that I'm bringing home, and he's getting it already. And so the turning on the youth, the access to the product, the fun part of this industry, no doubt a lot of work, a lot of hard work to maintain a consulting company like ours. But boy, it can be a lot of fun when you take the time to enjoy this industry. My first car, I have to think again. I think it was an old GM product. I can't even remember the model. My dad was a mechanic. They called them mechanics back 40 years ago. Now they're called service technicians. And he worked at a General Motors store, and I think it was a Chevy Vega. It was a terrible vehicle, by the way. I don't mean to denigrate General Motors, but it was the early stages of the GMs and the Fords and the Chryslers learning how to build these little Econo boxes. The Japanese were so far ahead, but I couldn't buy a Japanese product. My dad worked at a GM store. And so, and my dad wouldn't allow me to tinker with vehicles. This wasn't a vehicle that I could bring home and tear the engine apart and do all this work. My dad said, hey, you're smart. I want you to go to school. I don't want you tinkering on vehicles. And so it was a bit of a frustrating vehicle experience for me as well. So, and I actually crashed it and wrote it off. So, and I tell you the truth, I don't know what my second one was. Not really. I guess what made me fall in love with the auto sector is I'm academically focused. I'm an economist and a lot of background in math and things like that. In the auto industry, it's just so complex in terms of its implications for the economy. There's so many portals into the industry. I can enter the auto industry by working at a bank. I can enter the auto industry by working at a daily rental company. I can enter the auto industry by being at a car dealer, a Canadian Tire, and there's probably 100 different ports to go in. And that complexity for an economist and trying to figure out how this industry gets from point A to point B is very challenging, and I like challenging things. And so I actually wrote my first paper in the auto industry as a university student, and we published it in 1969. So that's 45 years ago. And over those 45 years, I've probably written 5,000 to 6,000 studies on this industry. And so you can imagine, how do you do that? That's the complexity in itself. And that's really turned me on from a career perspective. And and as much as I've written over 5,000 studies, I probably only understand half of this industry still after 45 years of studying it. That's how complex it is. I'm only halfway through my journey. And there's a lot more to understand and learn. It's stunning, the complexity of this industry.